Okay, let's unpack this truly bizarre artifact that landed on our virtual doorstep.
Huh?
You sent this our way, and honestly, we haven't been able to stop talking about it.
Right. It's one of those things that just sticks with you.
We're diving deep into FUX, an album credited to the Doza Crew, and it claims to be a recording from 1982.
1982. Yeah.
Now, right away, your ears just tell you something is wildly out of sync. The described sound is incredibly futuristic, almost aggressively modern.
Totally. It's the kind of sonic landscape you'd expect from, well, maybe even this decade, certainly not 4 decades ago.
It's like finding I don't know, a high-speed train engine in a museum full of steam locomotives. Just doesn't fit.
That initial jolt, that sort of temporal displacement, is exactly what makes this so compelling, isn't it?
Hmm.
Imagine, clicking play, expecting maybe early electro, some German new wave, maybe even proto-hip-hop from '82.
Yeah, it's something fitting the era.
And instead, you get slammed with something that sounds like it could be a cutting-edge release, like today. It immediately throws the whole premise of this album into this fascinating disarray.
Absolutely. And the mystery just deepens when you factor in this recurring headline from the same year, 1982, Helle Nacht im Schwarzenbunker.
Hell Night in the Black Bunker.
Yeah. Our sources indicate this was huge news back then. Big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like this potentially anachronistic album and this really ominous event from the exact same period.
Mm.
They feel like two pieces of a much larger and probably much stranger puzzle.
Exactly. The sudden appearance of FUX now, coupled with the almost like mythical obscurity of the FUX show itself, which we'll get into that,
Oh, yeah.
and this dramatic headline, it just begs the question, are these just isolated oddities, or are they threads woven into a single, albeit very peculiar historical tapestry?
So for this deep dive, we've got your provided stack of information, YouTube transcripts of what are claimed to be Doza Crew tracks, various analyses, chronicles, album descriptions. Quite a bit to sift through.
Yeah, a mixed bag of sources, definitely.
Our mission, as we see it, is to try and piece together the story behind this FUX album and the enigmatic Doza Crew. What clues do these sources give us about this seemingly out-of-time recording, and why is it even surfacing now?
It's a classic case of trying to reconstruct something from fragments, isn't it? We've got the album claiming one thing, this TV show that supposedly ran for ages but nobody remembers,
Vanished.
and a major, possibly tragic, news event from the same year. The challenge is seeing if and how these disparate elements might actually connect.
Okay, let's tackle that central anomaly head-on. The sound of FUX, it's consistently described as having this very futuristic, modern sound. And we're not talking about like a band that was just slightly ahead of the curve, like some early synth pop or new wave acts.
No, this sounds different. The descriptions point to sounds incorporating elements of contemporary electronic music, even proper techno.
In 1982,
Yeah.
in Germany, genres that were, really in their absolute infancy, if they even existed in their modern forms back then.
Well, what's particularly striking is the specificity in the track descriptions we have.
Right.
When you read about a track like Der Zug, being called a solid techno track, or another one, Nattergrau, described as brutal, cold, mechanical.
And didn't that one mention Laster?
Yeah, punctuated by hysterischen Lachanfällen, these hysterical fits of laughter. These aren't just vague terms.
No.
They evoke a very distinct sonic palette that, frankly, just wasn't prevalent in the mainstream or even most underground scenes of that era.
It makes you wonder, what kind of tech could they possibly have had? Or
Yeah.
what influences? How could you even make that sound in 1982?
It's like, yeah, the Renaissance painter, using Photoshop analogy you mentioned earlier, it feels impossible.
You were absolutely right to flag this as something that just doesn't compute. It immediately casts this huge shadow of doubt over that 1982 origin story. Or, at the very least, it hints at some incredibly unusual circumstances surrounding how it was made.
And this whole sonic anachronism leads us straight into the mystery of the FUX show itself. So our sources indicate FUX was actually a German Saturday night show. And it had a substantial run, apparently 1968 to 1982.
14 years. That's a significant chunk of TV history, especially for a Saturday night television in Germany back then. That was like primetime family viewing, a major cultural thing.
Absolutely. You'd expect a show with that kind of longevity to have left a considerable mark, Memories, clips, maybe merchandise.
Exactly. You'd think there'd be readily available clips on YouTube, maybe some old fan forums. behind-the-scenes stories, something.
But that's where it gets really weird.
Yeah.
Despite this reported 14-year run and a production team of, 23 people?
23 people, yeah.
There's a near-total absence of any recollection from anyone supposedly involved. And almost zero video evidence. It's like it existed in a vacuum.
It's genuinely bizarre. Like, was it deliberately erased? But wouldn't there be some record of that? Or is it more like some kind of, I don't know, mass cultural amnesia? Which sounds crazy, but...
The dissonance is just work. It's stark. You have these archival records apparently saying the show existed, but then this complete lack of personal memory or easily accessible visual proof. It's deeply unsettling.
It really is. It does make you wonder about, well, maybe some kind of highly effective scrubbing of the record, almost Orwellian, like you said.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, maybe some collective forgetting for reasons we just can't fathom.
And this recording, this Samstag Abend Aufnahme, the FUX album we're looking at, it's presented as the final episode.
Right, the grand finale.
Supposedly a tribute to the Doza crew, celebrating some kind of jubilee or anniversary for them.
So, not a typical farewell to the show itself, but focused squarely on the band.
Which in itself is unusual, right?
Yeah.
Dedicating the entire final broadcast of a long-running show to the house band, it suggests a very close, maybe even pivotal relationship between the TV program and the Doza crew.
Which only deepens the enigma, considering both then vanish from popular memory. So, okay, what kind of music were the Doza crew making that would warrant this whole final episode tribute? Based on the song titles and these descriptions we have, their sound seems incredibly diverse. All over the place, really. We're talking energetic instrumentals like Strassenfeger, Street Sweeper, basically. Then you've got epic, emotional-sounding tracks like Vibe Check.
Right.
Then there's straight-up rap with Battle Kings. And then, jarringly, back to this modern techno sound in tracks like Der Tug, The Train.
And Mitwau, Nidogre.
Yeah, Natagro. This persistent modernity in their sound just keeps pulling us back to that central puzzle, that 82 date.
The sheer range is remarkable. It hints at a band with, incredibly wide influences, or maybe just a really restless creative spirit. But like we keep saying, it's the presence of what genuinely sounds like futuristic music for the time that remains the core anomaly. It's not just genre bending. It feels temporally displaced.
And lyrically, their themes seem to swing wildly, too, between celebrating community, friendship, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there are titles like THNX and Beer Commissariat.
The Beer Commissariat, love that.
Right. Descriptions mention thanking friends, the camaraderie of sharing beers. There's this vibe of living in the moment, celebrating that comes through in Vibe Check, THNX, Beer Commissariat, Shoashik. Just enjoying the energy, the music.
Seems pretty standard good time band stuff. You can imagine them having a strong local following.
Which, again, makes their subsequent obscurity all the more puzzling, doesn't it? If they had that connection.
But then you dig just a little deeper into those track descriptions, and a much more unsettling, darker undercurrent emerges pretty quickly. Soundbite is described as creepy, dark. Then we're back to Natagrau, brutal, cold, mechanical. And those hysterischen Lachenfällen, that hysterical laughter again.
Yeah, that laughter keeps popping up.
And then Black as Balrog. I mean, that dives headfirst into apocalyptic stuff. More hysterischen Lachen, infernal vocals from what are described as hellish angels, and a Balrog from Lord of the Rings.
Bringing the apocalypse?
Yeah, bringing the end of the world. That's a pretty stark contrast to the beer-drinking buddies vibe from earlier tracks.
That juxtaposition is fascinating. Light-hearted celebration 1 minute, deeply disturbing, almost horror-like themes the next. Is it just artistic range, or is it hinting at the darker narrative that seems to unfold during this supposed final broadcast?
And that recurring hysterical laughter. It's definitely something to note. Is it madness? Is it a reaction to horror? Is it something symbolic? Who knows?
It feels significant somehow.
And let's not forget the tracks described as just cryptic, like the funky filler or parts of Soundbite where the lyrics are apparently hard to interpret, almost nonsensical.
Just adds another layer of fog to it all.
Could be intentional, maybe, to create unease or invite interpretation, or maybe just reflecting the chaos that seems to build throughout the show.
It's hard to say, but it definitely contributes to the overall feeling of strangeness.
Now, the FUX show wasn't just the Doza crew. There's this whole cast of, well, peculiar characters involved in this unfolding drama.
Right, the guests and regulars.
First up, there's this guy, Mikkel, described as a known musician in the Doza crew's orbit.
Okay.
Notorious for incredibly energetic, often demonic stage performances. And guess what?
What?
Apparently frequently involved hysterical laughter.
Ah, there it is again. So he seems connected to that Sonic theme?
Seems like it. And weirdly, he's also connected to some long-running online drama called The Streik mit dem Drachenlord, The Dispute with the Dragon Lord, which feels like this bizarre anchor to like modern internet culture dropped into this 1982 mystery.
That is strange. Mikkel sounds like a key figure, though. Close to the band, unsettling performance style. The Drachenlord thing is just out there.
Yeah.
But maybe relevant somehow.
Who knows at this point? Then we have the truly surreal.
Yeah.
The octopus DJ.
Okay, now you have my full attention. An octopus.
An octopus DJ.
Yeah.
Picture this. A Lovecraftian figure, tentacles and all, acting as the studio DJ for tracks like Intermezzo and DJ Skit. He even shows up at the after party in the track Neon Grau, described as bedrohlich threatening. And the album notes even mention this weird feeling that he seems somehow familiar.
That's deeply weird. A tentacled, threatening DJ on a Saturday night show in 1982, that's pushing boundaries even for late night.
Right, and that feeling of familiarity, is
Yeah.
it someone in costume? Is it symbolic? A shared hallucination, maybe, given the weird vibe?
Lovecraftian imagery was bubbling up in certain subcultures then, so maybe it represents chaos, the unknown intruding on the normal show format. Still, very odd.
There were other guests, too. We have a beer commissar Capers, a.k.a. Dr. OTZ, for the beer commissariat track, someone called the Vank for Levank, singers from a group called Ozod, and enigmatic hood lady on Soundbite,
Right.
a women's krautrock rock band that we need to talk about them more, and this poor guy, Kyrem, who has a rather dramatic upstairs a crash or downfall.
Quite the eclectic lineup. It paints a picture of a vibrant, if very strange, subcultural scene surrounding the show.
And as the show goes on, the weirdness doesn't just stay weird, it actively escalates. It gets darker, sinister even. We start with aliens doing comedy. Okay, weird, but maybe just quirky TV. Then the tentacle DJ, these unsettling music bits. But the show act by the women's krautrock band, that feels like a real turning point in the descriptions.
How so?
It apparently starts with this strange preamble that gets cut off abruptly. Then it jarringly shifts into generic pop music, but with noticeable sound breaks, glitches in the recording.
Technical issues or something else.
Exactly. Then, out of nowhere, a dark, disturbing verse emerges. Then more sound breaks. And it culminates in this desperate, almost screamed vocal performance that includes a warning, which is also cut short.
Wow. That sounds genuinely disturbing, like something going seriously wrong during the broadcast.
Yeah, that description.
Yeah.
It sends chills down your spine, doesn't it? Was it part of the act? Or was something genuinely breaking down behind the scenes? A cry for help caught on tape?
The fragmentation, the shifts, the cutoff warning, it strongly suggests a breakdown. Maybe censorship, sabotage, something interfering with the performance.
And then there's Kyrem, the guy who crashes.
It's Circe, yeah.
He apparently gets super drunk at the after-show party, starts harassing people according to the notes, and gets thrown out. A moment of just messy, drunken reality amidst the high strangeness.
It's almost mundane chaos compared to the krautrock incident or the octopus DJ, but maybe it underscores the volatility of the whole evening, foreshadows the bigger breakdown.
Which brings us to the really chilling climax, the arrival of the Super Spa Staffel, the SSS.
Super fun squadron. Staffel usually means squadron or relay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Super fun Staffel, maybe. After Kyrem gets booted, the host, who apparently had this catchphrase, Meine Damen und Herren, der Wahnsinn eskaliert. Ladies and gentlemen, the madness escalates.
Seems appropriate for the show.
He suddenly interrupts everything, stops the party, announces everyone must return to the studio immediately.
That's a jarring shift. From party vibe to command. Ominous.
Yeah, it feels less like part of the show and more like an order.
Definitely a turning point. A sense of foreboding sets in.
And then comes the twist. The host reveals himself, not by taking off a mask, but by announcing he's an agent of this Super Spa Staffel, SSS.
Whoa.
The studio doors are locked. The attendees are forcibly divided into groups of 5, subjected to rapid interrogations,
Yeah.
and then apparently swiftly judged and just taken away.
Taken away where? By who exactly? The SSS.
It seems so. The host is described as sadistic, reveling in the fear, and actively encouraging people to denounce each other to avoid Strafen für Schweigen penalties for silence.
That's terrifying. It shifts from bizarre entertainment to something political, Authoritarian, like a sudden brutal crackdown.
Exactly. It sounds like some clandestine organization with the power to just detain people. The denunciation part.
Yeah.
Pure paranoia fuel, reminiscent of totalitarian regimes. A horrifying turn for what was supposed to be a celebratory final show.
The panic must have been immense.
It seems so, because that's precisely where the main recording abruptly cuts off. Mid-track, the track title. Simply Biss.
Hello.
Yeah, until, like to be continued, but in the most horrifying way possible. Just cuts out right in the middle of this nightmare.
That sudden silence, it amplifies the dread, makes you imagine the worst, underscores how swift and brutal this SSS intervention must have been.
But the recording doesn't completely end there. There's a bit more.
Oh.
We get a glimpse into a smaller, much more subdued after-show party. Just Mikkel and guess who?
Let me guess. The Octopus DJ.
You got it. Performing a track called Neon Growl live, the atmosphere is described understandably as heavy, subdued.
So some people were spared, or maybe complicit. The fact that it's Mikkel and the octopus, the figures linked to the darker, weirder stuff. That's interesting. And unsettling.
Very. It offers this chilling little epilogue to the main broadcast's chaos. Raises disturbing questions about who knew what or who was involved with the SSS. And then the very final track on the recording. Blackest Balrog.
Right, the apocalyptic one.
Described as a nightmarish soundscape. Filled with that recurring hysterical laughter again. These infernal demonic vocals from hellish entities. The Balrog bringing destruction. It sounds like a terrifying fever dream captured on audio.
A sonic representation of the chaos, maybe? The destruction that followed the SSS takeover?
Seems likely. It's described as this chaotic blend of laughter and choral elements, and then just silence again. The recording ends. Abruptly.
A grim finale. Ties together those darker themes and the likely fate of everyone caught up in it. Leaves you with just unease.
And the final detail, the one that sort of ties a grim bow on this whole disturbing package.
What's that?
Our sources indicate the television studio itself was completely destroyed after this final broadcast.
Destroyed? How?
Does say how, just destroyed. And the fate of those taken away by the Super Spaz staffel and the Doza crew members themselves, completely unknown. Vanished.
Wow. Complete erasure. Adds a final layer of tragedy and mystery. Destruction of the physical space, too.
It reinforces the idea that something truly catastrophic occurred and leaves all these questions hanging about who survived, if anyone.
Which brings us right back to that headline.
Exactly.
Right.
The Hunde Nacht im Schwarzenbunker. Hell Night in the Black Bunker. The newspaper article source says that in 1982, this headline was everywhere. Dominated the news. It strongly suggests this Sam Stagg, Abend, off now this FUX album. It might genuinely be the final documented moments before whatever that catastrophe was.
And if you connect those dots, the album and the real-world headline,
it forces you to reconsider everything, even the most outlandish details of the FUX show. Could the aliens, the octopus DJ, Mikkel's demonic laughter, could they have been more than just bizarre entertainment? Could they have been connected somehow to this real-world Hell Night?
That convergence is deeply unsettling. The line between the broadcast's fantasy or apparent fantasy and this documented real-world tragedy starts to blur.
Makes you wonder if figures like the octopus and Mikkel weren't just performers, but harbingers, participants even, in whatever happened during that Hunde Nacht.
It's a chilling thought.
And speaking of strange figures, there was that brief mention, almost a throwaway, about an earlier Doza Crew single. It apparently featured newspaper clippings about an octopus.
An octopus again.
And an ominous graph paste.
Yeah.
An ominous count paste.
Count paste, okay.
Yeah.
That just adds another layer of weird mythology.
Right. It feels like there's this deeper, maybe even more sinister backstory woven into the fabric of the Doza Crew's world all along. The recurring octopus, this count paste, suggests a consistent theme, maybe hinting at this larger, unsettling narrative.
It could connect the weirdness of the final show to their earlier work, suggesting it wasn't just a one-off chaotic event, but part of something bigger they were exploring or involved in.
So let's try to quickly recap this descent into the truly bizarre. We've got an album, FUX, supposedly from '82, sounds decades too modern. It claims to be the recording of the final episode of a German TV show.
A show that ran for 14 years but is basically forgotten.
Right. A show featuring alien comedians, a tentacle DJ, increasingly disturbing music, and it culminates in the host revealing he's part of this Super Spaz staffel, locking everyone in, arresting people.
Before the recording cuts out during a track called Until.
And all of this seems tied somehow to a real-world event, the Hell Night in the Black Bunker, that dominated the news in the very same year, 1982.
Precisely. The mix of anachronistic music, the forgotten show, the surreal events within it, and the real-world tragedy. It creates this profoundly mysterious and deeply unsettling puzzle.
So here's a final thought, maybe an unsettling one for you to wrestle with. Given the stark reality of that Hullen nach dem Schwarzen Bunker headline and the terrifying escalation we hear within the Samstagabend Aufnahme, what truly happened during that final broadcast?
Yeah.
Was the Superspa Staffel just a fictional element within the show's bizarre narrative that somehow bled into reality? Or was it a real-world entity that hijacked the broadcast for its own sinister purposes, maybe culminating in that Hell Night?
It really makes you question the nature of the recording and the events themselves. Fiction. Reality. Something horrifically in between.
You brought us a real rabbit hole with this one. Hopefully, this deep dive has shed some light on the mysteries surrounding FUX and the Doza crew. But perhaps it's also unearthed even more intriguing and frankly disturbing questions for you to ponder.